Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samniego here, along with Adam, Julia, Joshua, and Kobe from the Podium Finish. A full house today. And of course, we want to thank our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee. Buy me a coffee, particularly if you want to buy a coffee for anyone on the air. We would greatly appreciate it. And of course, the Patreon help keep the channel on the air, pay for all the bills as we cover motorsports. And we encourage everyone to share their comments and questions in the chat room. I'm already starting to see some of them, but we'll get started with the big story. We encourage all the viewers to comment on this. While in Bastianini, he took his first career pole. We saw the new chicane today. But the big one I think we're all talking about was the story before qualifying. Sprint races to occur on Saturday in every round for 2023. The word was leaked yesterday. This morning in a press conference, Dorna Motorsports made it official. This year we had 20 races, 21 originally. So next year we're looking at 40 to 42 point races in a year. Carmelo Esperanza, CEO of Dorna Motorsports, said this was to improve the show. The qualifying will determine the starting grid for both the sprint and the feature, and the sprint race will award half points compared to the Grand Prix, which will award the full points. Julia, starting with you, what are your initial thoughts, and is this the right move for MotoGP?
I must say I'm conflicted about that because I understand Dorna trying to make MotoGP more, exciting with, less practice to get more fans because it's been going down for a little past years. There are less fans watching. I mean, of course, I think it occurs also to the prices, for example, of the video pass, but they're trying, but I don't like the thing that I don't like the most is not asking riders about their opinion on such impactful stuff on a schedule. Because this is something they are going to do. They are going now ride two races instead of one for the whole season, like of 20 or 21 rounds. So they should have been asked, and I didn't know anything up until yesterday when they were asked by the journalist who heard the rumor. And as Fabio Quartararo said, I concur. Honestly, I don't think it's right to do this without asking the riders' opinions first. At least I wasn't asked. No one was asked. Honestly, and I think this is something bad. I mean, if Peleta said that this is not something for them or FIM to tell the riders that it should be the teams, that the teams knew. But I found it surprising that, for example, also Jack Miller or anyone from Ducati didn't know about that. And just try imagine Paolo Ciabatti or Gigi Dall'Igna not telling the riders that something like this is gonna happen next year. Or Eve Poncharal, the chief of Tech Free KTM, who was, I don't think, who was also happy, as I've heard, with this sprint races. It's working for superbikes. It's been there for 4 years already. But also superbikes since the 80s, when they were introduced, they had two races. So this was changed from 2 to 3, and one was shorter. And it is working for them. What I like is the idea that it's not gonna be the same as superbikes, because for superbikes the sprint race is determines the top 10 start position for the race too. So if you're gonna crash in the super pole race, the sprint race in the superbikes, you are in a really bad position in the race too. But for the MotoGP, it's gonna be only points. It may, we may see more hard race, and this is something what Jack Miller liked about it, that this is gonna be more racing, that he's not going to be worried about the tire, about his physical condition for the race. But they were not asked. Of course, there were fans asked, because as I remember, because I also did the survey for the MotoGP, the famous one. There was a question about sprint races, but we still don't know results. The results of the survey are supposed to be published in September. So we're kind of not sure how it worked out. It was just, Dorna's wishful to do something like that without asking the riders, who are not going to have to change the schedule, for opinion. It's also going to be different for the teams, see the mechanics used to 3 practices, then the FP4, which already is like a little, like a prologue to the race, that they can change some things, check some stuff. Then they have the warm-up. It's not going to be in ruins all the time. They're not going to have FP4. There's not even sure if they're going to have the warm-up in the morning like they used to. So this is such a big change, and not many people were asked about that. It is working for Superbikes. It was also introduced after Superbikes to Formula One, but we only have a few weekends of that, not the whole season immediately. For Formula One, it was a test of a few weekends. MotoGP is just doing it right away without any checks how it's gonna work, without any checks of a race schedule. So I'm really conflicted about. I wanna believe this is gonna work. This is gonna be exciting and gonna bring maybe more fans if they're gonna see that this is exciting. But I'm not sure how it's gonna be for riders, for the teams, even for people working there, like journalists or the circuit staff. Especially for the riders on the physical toll, because it is different from switching to 2 races to 3 like in Superbikes, and from 1 to 2 for a whole season in MotoGP on a different bike, not a fabric bike, but the special bike created for MotoGP, not from like a road bike. So I'm really curious to see that. And as we know, Carlos Espeleta was really defensive when asked by journalists, that they're trying to create something like a drama. But it is what the riders said, and they were quoting the riders who were not late, or Fabio calling it stupid. And they are going to ride it, not Carlos, who's going to sit in his office in Barcelona. So I don't know what to think about that. We'll just have to wait up until Portugal in 2023 to see how they're gonna work this out.
Yeah, and I know we've got a couple of comments coming through before I go on to my rant as well. Disma says, yes, I like MotoGP sprint race, same as F1 and F2 sprint race. And Nico says, I enjoy MotoGP, but I can't for the life of me ever remember when the races are. Lol, he says as well. And that's the problem. As Disma says, hello, I'm watching from Indonesia. Great MotoGP race we had there in Indonesia earlier on in the year as well.
Right.
And everyone says, happy Independence Day for Indonesia. The 77th as well. That's fantastic as well. And
Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day, yeah. And that race in Indonesia earlier on in the year was absolutely fantastic. I think the whole weekend was great as well. Megan didn't like waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to have a 2-hour delay, but still, she's still getting me back for that one. Right. Clear throat time. You ready? I have been thinking, I've got 2 views on the sprint. One, sprint races don't work. They devalue the sanctity of Grand Prix racing. We've seen in Formula One the fact that we've had how many now? 5 Formula One sprint races. Only one of them was entertaining, and that's only because Lewis Hamilton got a penalty and was sent to the back of the grid. Superbikes do have sprint races, and some of them are entertaining, yes, but they've got a completely different format to what MotoGP are going to have. We heard Carmelo as well saying that it's going to be the MotoGP style. So it's its own format, half distance, half points as well. No limit on fuel or tyres as well, but surely there's got to be, because otherwise, as was pointed out, the thirstier, richer Ducati bikes can put in more fuel, go faster and take the victories. So it's all confusing. Do the wins for the sprint races count towards the overall tally of Grand Prix victories? So if Bagnaia wins on Saturday and on Sunday, does he win 2 races or does he just win the 1? Is the sprint going to become a separate entity of victories? I think that's the second one, is the better idea, to have the sprint as a separate column. So Grand Prix victories, sprint victories. That's a better idea. But I don't like the sprints. Point 2, I can see why the idea of sprints would be appealing. I've always said that. The sprint race, in theory, is a very good idea, but you've got to handle it correctly. The reason the F1 sprint hasn't worked is because they've filed it away in the same TV deal as everywhere else. It's on the same Sky F1, locked behind a paywall, ESPN in America. It's not on free-to-air networks anywhere. Channel 4 had the first in the UK, had the first ever F1 sprint at Silverstone live. It brought in more viewers than the Grand Prix on the Sunday. And that Sunday race was when Hamilton and Verstappen made contact with each other. That's the power that the F1 sprint could have to bring in new viewers. It hasn't done so. And sadly, that format has sort of died a death. And now we're still being lumbered on with it. At least it's only going to be 3 next year. 3 sprint races I can live with. The idea that MotoGP is going to do another season, in effect, 22 sprint races, is unbelievable for next season. 44 races we are going to have in MotoGP. From a broadcasting point of view, I don't just do MotoGP, I do Formula One, Formula E, everything. That all takes place on a Saturday. Formula E is a Saturday championship. I am actually and honestly sitting here right now thinking to myself, is MotoGP worth commentating on if it turns into this clown show that we've seen over this weekend? This is honestly the worst weekend of MotoGP I've seen ever. They haven't told the riders their plans, and it's the riders that are suffering the most with it. The Carlos Espinosa was getting angry with the journalists, losing his cool in the meeting as well. Fans have said on social media, no, we don't want this. I would say it's 75% fans said, no, we don't want this. 25% say, yes, this is a good idea. But this is designed, they say, to bring in the younger generation of viewers to try and bring something back to MotoGP. I am a young person. I'm 23 years old. And this idea is turning me off MotoGP because it's overexposure. You run the risk of what NASCAR has done in terms of having races every single weekend. And yes, you always know it's on, but you don't tune in to all of them. You run the risk of overexposure. And personally, I was thinking next year, we'll air the qualifyings. We'll air some qualifyings live and some qualifyings delayed. I think that would be really nice for people to see the full qualifying format. Now, I'm faced the choice of having to do qualifying, having to do the sprint, and the race live as well. I don't know if I can do the sprints live, all of them, and that then will get me in trouble with the things I'm allowed to do with using MotoGP watch-alongs. So I face it of doing all the sprints and sacrificing a Formula 2 or a Formula 3 race and even a Formula E race, or just leave it. So I don't like it. And also, another thing that's really got to me as a broadcaster is that for the past 5 years, there's been a gentleman's agreement between all the major sports of Formula One, IndyCar, World Endurance Championship, MotoGP, that you will not have the premiere of racing at the same time. So MotoGP won't run at the same time as Formula One. That's after they spent the last 7 years before that in head-to-head competition, and MotoGP got slammed in the ratings around the world. So they realized, okay, we can't do that anymore. They've announced today that MotoGP will always now be the last race of the day. What that now means is that what usually happens in races such as Portugal, Great Britain, and races in Australia as well, because of the time difference, they move MotoGP to the second race of the day. That's now not going to happen, which means it's a likelihood that at least 2 MotoGP races could clash directly with the start of a Formula One race. So I can't do MotoGP, so I'm going to have to miss a race because I've got things priority with Formula One. It's just a mess. It seems like this weekend, Dorna, the FIM, and the teams have all got together and said, right, how can we exploit money more? How can we annoy every single fan on the planet? Because it's greed. Cash is king. Nico says, I think in F1, the actual Grand Prix is always more important, and it's more about survival than whatever points you receive. Yeah, that's the spirit of Grand Prix racing. Grand Prix, Grand Prize is what it was originally. It's racing on the Sunday, qualifying on the Saturday, race on the Sunday. That's the way it's always been. Johnny says it's not about more racing. F1 have 147,383% better social media. Yeah, it's that too. MotoGP have been falling behind, not because their format is wrong. It's because they haven't engaged with social media like Formula One have. They were both the last dinosaurs and got left behind by social media. Bernie Eccleston was always saying, no, you can't put anything on social media. No, all that lot. He got kicked out And all of a sudden we had race highlights on YouTube, qualifying highlights, F1 live shows after the race, all free on YouTube for the younger generation to come in and see what this sport's like. And F1 is now booming. They got that drive to survive and it's booming in America. They have hit the nail on the head and Formula One is at an all-time high. MotoGP tried with MotoGP Unlimited as a drive to survive. It failed because it didn't release it in English in the first day. It took, 3 days for it to get out? It was stuck in Spanish. It was ridiculous. And they don't put any highlights on their social media channels. They only ever put crashes on, which in 9 times out of 10 is a very serious accident. They even put Jason DePasquier's death on their social media channel. When Marco Simoncelli died as well, it was all over their things as well. Big crash in race and all that lot. It's sickening. It's absolute. They are stuck in the 90s and I hate it. It's honestly awful. I think it's time, and I'm saying it now, many people have said it, I think it's time that Carmelo Espinosa they have a change. They have a change. He's got to go. The FIM president has got to go. Carmelo's got to go. They need to get younger people in there who actually know what younger people want and not this ridiculous cash grab. Honestly, I am so annoyed. I've kept my temper down a bit, but I'm so annoyed with MotoGP to the point where I'm honestly thinking of just walking away from the series. And I love MotoGP. I really have. It was the second sport I fell in love with after F1. But honestly, I can't deal with this. It's too much of a clown show now. And I'm honestly like, I can't deal with it. It's not fun anymore. They've made me more stressed than an entire season. I've done 7 race weekends in one weekend. This has made me more stressed planning for next year than anything else. It made me more annoyed. MotoGP, if they wanted to bring in new fans, this is the complete wrong way to go about it. There's my rant.
Yeah. Can I say something? I think when I was in the World Superbikes 3 weeks ago in Moss, because I was at the circuit with the accreditation, I talked to INDYCAR Raikkonen, and when we talked, I asked him how he changed, how different is the INDYCAR from MotoGP and INDYCAR from Superbikes, and he literally said that in the MotoGP paddock, between everyone, there's a lot of bull. You can end it because I shouldn't curse on TV. And I think we can all a little agree with him about what's going in MotoGP, like every race weekend, or at least every 2 race weekends, with all this drama between teams, between riders, between the chiefs of Dorna and everyone. And I don't even sometimes know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, this came out of left field. For me here, and especially in the United States, I remember F1 switching to the sprint format, NASCAR making their changes to make a better show. And I've always thought MotoGP as, okay, they're very hands-off. We're seeing Ducati, the dominance, the ride height mechanisms. Some people, the race is not what it used to be. But they seem very hands-off. And for this sudden change of essentially doubling the number of races, holy smokes. Big change coming for MotoGP. During the press conference, we noticed Javier Panchari, International Race Team Association president, called the idea essentially stupid. Carmelo, very defensive, as you mentioned, especially the question about a riders' union, reminded me of when we saw in NASCAR, Brian France at the time got very defensive when I know what's best for the sport. The drivers, the teams need to talk to me. They don't need to organize. Many riders unaware of this, and definitely this is just something very hot topic as we've been seeing in the comments in the chat room too.
And Julia, I think you'd agree with me that I think we are going to see the riders now have a union. It's been talked about for nearly 30 years now, but I think this is the most stressful it's ever got. Effectively, you are saying to them, you're going to do 44 races a year. And I think even they are like, no, this is Grand Prix level. The bikes are heavier. The bikes are harder than what they are in World Superbikes. I don't think they want to do it. I honestly think we could be seeing a union coming and maybe even a strike that we've seen previously.
I think they can be in union. Fabio Di Giannantonio is one of the biggest, it's one of the riders who always been said that they need a union, and he was asked about it again right now, and he said that he's still for it, and that they really need it as because safety commission is not what people think. It's just about safety. It's not about talking how riders feels. No one really cares about that stuff. And Superbikes, as much I really love it. It is an amazing series, and this is a very family-like series between the fans, between the riders. But this is different from MotoGP. When you are standing next to the track, for people it's different. This is slower. They're slower. The brakes are different. There's the toe doesn't help that much as in MotoGP. The aerodynamics are different. I think MotoGP may be more tiring for the riders to do 2 races than for the riders who switch from 2 races to 3 in the Superbikes. And as we know, we have 12 rounds in World Superbikes, and they are separated. When we have, for example, we had Misano in the middle of June. The next round was Donington in the middle of July, a month later. Then we had Most 2 weeks later, and now we have a month break before Manicure. This year, we're going to have the first ever since the introduction of the series in 1988, the first ever double header as a test. It's going to be a test between Mandalika and Phillip Island. So they are pretty close to then not be a big time change. So this is totally different, but we'll see what the rider's going to do, because now kind of lays in their hand what they're going to do.
I reckon, just before I'll send back to you, Joe, I reckon this will last around about 3-4 races before everyone starts saying, no, this doesn't work. This is not working. And I reckon there'll be a massive crash on the Saturday. Riders will get injured, and then nobody can race on the Sunday, because all it takes is, as we see, one big accident and you're out for a long time. So you've got to count that in. With F1, yes, there's a risk that you'll crash. But in MotoGP, if you crash, there's a risk that you'll get seriously injured. And to risk that twice for only half points, I don't think so. And there's 25 riders on the grid, and only the top 9 get points in this new format. So in the normal race, it goes down to 15 positions. So I don't know. This isn't going to last long. 44 races, though. I'm going to have to come up with a new catchphrase. Otherwise, I think saying action or lights out is going to get pretty boring. So, yeah, I'll have to think of something new. Maybe cash is go or something like that, just to see what we can rake in. But honestly, it's such a joke, this. It won't last long.
One of the things I'm starting to anticipate, if you know you're running 12th, 13th, but you have a better starting position on the Grand Prix, you might just sandbag and take it easy, save that bike. You may not get the points. Why risk it? Focus on the full points the next day. It's going to be very interesting. And of course, we're going to be following this story as it develops more, especially on Grid Tonight, hosted by Kobe and Adam Wednesday. So for everyone watching, especially first-time MotoGP viewers, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment so that way you won't miss any of our programs that we covered this story. The championship, it is now down to 7 races. Of course, with next year's format, that'll be 14 races. Bastianini's on the pole with Ducati. Riders right behind him, Jack Miller and Pecco Bagnaia. Fabio Quartararo, he is the only non-Ducati rider in the top 5. So we're going to see, I think, the Ducatis up front challenging Fabio, trying to do what he can with that Yamaha. And this track is known for high speeds. We know of the challenges and the dangers. We got this new chicane, which we saw some riders have some issues with during qualifying. So overall, I think this is going to be one of those races where Ducati looks like they're going to be up front. You're going to have Fabio Quartararo, but that chicane could spell essentially trouble, especially on that first lap. So Joshua, starting with you, the race complexion, is it going to change drastically with this new chicane? Will Ducati dominate? And a question to add in from the chat room, and Bastianini win at this track?
Well, to answer the first question there from Dismas as well, can Bastianini win at the Red Bull Ring? Yes, he can. I think that was an outstanding qualifying lap time we saw him from, and his first ever pole position in MotoGP. To answer the first part of your question, Joe, that chicane, which I described as a sticking plaster over a stab wound, is the most useless thing I've ever seen. This weekend is so controversial with opinions as well, with everything that's been going on. That chicane has been put in to stop massive accidents happening at the top of the hill at turn 3 at Remus. And we've only seen one big accident at that part of the track, and that was a couple of years ago. Yes, that chicane will stop those type of accidents. But the reason the race was red flagged last year in Austria, not Styria, the Austria race, the one the week after, was because Danny Pedrosa fell off the bike at the exit at the top of the hill under acceleration, and I think it was Savadori hit the bike and broke his ankle. So it's not going to stop those type of accidents because it was under acceleration that caused the problem there. So it's that turn 3 itself that is tricky for MotoGP bikes. So yeah, it's a sticking plaster over a stab wound. It's not going to do a blind bit of difference. In fact, I think we're going to see more accidents tomorrow at the start of the race because you're going to launch up the inside. And because of the way that chicane's been organized, so it doesn't mess up with the F1 straight, you turn right. You turn left to go right. So you go to the left, then you swing back to the right, and that puts you on a very narrow line through the chicane. So we're going to see riders making some contact with each other. So the start, I'm going to be watching like this with headsets on and just hoping that's all okay. To answer the Ducati thing, Ducati really always liked this track. It's historically their best track as well. I think KTM are the only ones to beat them here last year in the wet race we had with Binder winning. So, or was it Oliveira? One of the two. So I think... Binder, thank you. So I think we're going to see Ducati again do well. I think the Prima Pramacs have been surprisingly good in qualifying. And I think the factory Ducatis have found their rhythm again. So I'm expecting this to be a Ducati run-up. I think Quartararo is going to have a bad weekend. Qualifying, was it 5th in the grid? That's a bit low from him. And I think we're going to see something good from the Aprilias, who a bit hit and miss. We saw that Aleix and Maverick were testing some new brakes as well in practice. They were a bit late down into turn 4 as well. And Salvador is here as their wildcard rider this weekend to get some more points. I think all 3 Aprilias will score points. I think it could be the chance that the championship gap just starts to close if Aleix can stay ahead of Fabio Quartararo, who I think is going to drop back in the race because he's never really clicked with this track that much.
So before I forget, I'm going to the chicane. They're trying to, save it for the accidents that for not to happen. But honestly, just imagine the situation when we have a race start. They are all in a group and someone comes on the inside of the rider because he wants to overtake, and then he misses the braking and go through, through the corner, through the gravel, and there is another rider in front of him who's on the track. So honestly, I can imagine if that's safer that everyone was thinking about. When I was talking to some people on the Superbikes paddock, we talked about the Red Bull Ring, about this new chicane. We're looking at photos and we're thinking like, this looks crazy, and that we had absolutely no idea how it's gonna look for the weekend, especially during the race. How they're going to run through it, it was just all unknown. But honestly, people were thinking, oh, this chicane is gonna interrupt Ducatis, or because they are like long straight, but it is not like that. Absolutely. Ducati's bike likes the quick acceleration as well as just being on a long straight. And, you just go into the chicane, you brake, you go for chicane and do accelerate highly to go into the turn 3. This is something what Ducati likes, and we see it. We have 4 Ducatis in front in the first 4 places of the qualifying, and we have Bastianini who can win the race again, and then we have Miller, Bagnaia, Martin, who are all very fast. So I think we may see a little of a Ducati concern again. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be an entertaining race, because it may be, but it's still going to be Ducati, I think, with the best position. Otherwise, if it's going to rain, then I am not counting on Brad Binder, because you don't do that on Red Bull Ring, as we know, because this guy is absolutely crazy in the rain. I think Ducati is definitely a better position to win this race, maybe to even look at the podium, the whole podium. And then there's becoming a problem to both Fabio Quartararo and Aleix Espargaro, who are in the, they're in the top 2 spots of the championship, but there are people saying how there are journalists saying that Bagnaia is a 10 championship contender when he is losing over 40 points to Fabio. But look, he won last 2 races. He's going strong to win even this round if he's gonna overtake Enea and Jack. This 49 points may disappear very quickly if Fabio and Alex are going to be on the podium all the time and win races. So I think Ducati is in such a strong position right now that maybe even in the tracks that are supposedly not for them, they are going to be very strong. And especially that now they're coming the tracks that they like. Aragon, like from the last year, this great duel of Bagnaia with Marquez, they like this track. Misano, Ducati likes this track, Pecco won the race last year there, and Ducati didn't have a 1-2 in the second round in San Marino just because they chose the tire wrong and Jack and Pecco crashed, but they were on the way on it. So this is the second part of the season is for Ducati, and if Fabio and Alain are going to find something maybe tomorrow and in the upcoming races in these tracks, they may quickly lose the advantage over Bagnaia.
The advantage right there, it could, as you say, shrink down race by race if Fabio is not on that podium. It's not over yet, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, especially Aleix Espargaro. He had a rough day, had to go Q1, then Q2. Vinales, his teammates starting ahead. Paul Espargaro, big news, of course, Gas Racing Team. He's going to be there. That's essentially the old Tech 3 team being rebranded. Juan Mir, one of his best qualifying performances of the season. He's still winless this year. Overall, Julia, which riders besides the Ducati riders and Quartararo you feel has the best shot at getting a podium in the race?
Besides Ducati riders, other Ducati riders. But honestly, I think that Aprilia. I think I would say that Aprilia, even though you can look at the results and think, wow, what happened to Aprilia, when you think about the previous round in Silverstone, but they are still able to, make through it and maybe find something for the race specifically that's going to help them to at least fight those Ducatis in front. I have no idea what to say about Fabio, because, he doesn't like this track. He never liked it. And he has some pace, but it's disappearing comparing to Ducati. So it is hard to say if he will be able to fight with Ducatis in front of him. For now, I don't think so that he will be able to do that as before in the, for example, previous seasons. I think Aprilia will be more, aligned to do this, especially Maverick Vinales, who really has a pace. We're going to see that he has a pace. He was just lost in disqualifying, but maybe in the race it's going to be better for him. And if it rains, I'm going to go with Brad Binder, because now after last year, I just can't discount it because, you don't do that. This guy can do anything if it rains, even go on the slicks for 10 laps.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the Austrian Grand Prix tomorrow. Now, Julia, before we let you off there, of course, thank you so much for your time. As always, it's that time, though. Pick a winner for this race. Who do you anticipate is going to be on the top spot of the podium?
I'm so bad at this. I think at Silverstone, I went with Maverick. Yeah, we know how it ended. I'm the best at jinxing everyone, but I really think that Pecco has the pace to win. Of course, Enea was the fastest, but if it's gonna be Ducati, I would say Pecco or Jack, but I'm gonna go for Pecco. Why not?
It's gonna be really interesting to see Pecco or Jack up there. Julia, thank you so much for your time. Everyone be sure to follow Julia on Twitter The videos get time. Now we switch over to the Saturday night race, but it's not the Cup Series. It's IndyCar.
Yeah, and the NTT INDYCAR Series is racing tonight at Worldwide Technology Raceway Gateway, the final oval race of the 2022 season. Will Power enters as the points leader and sits on the pole for the 67th time in his IndyCar career, tying the great Mario Andretti for most poles all time. However, there's not a lot of time for Power to enjoy this huge accomplishment because the top 7 in points are starting first through 7th. Starting with you, Josh, how intense will the race start be with the top 7 in the points starting up front together?
I think it's going to be really intense and really exciting if we get underway with that rain cloud that's due in as well, and it might wash the track out. But if we do get going, the track is going to be greasy. It's going to be slippery a little bit as well. It's going to have no rubber on it. It's on the low line, all that high line that they spent practice to the first half an hour trying to clean up. I think we're in for a really entertaining race. Qualifying yesterday played out perfectly. Exactly what we all wanted to see in terms of how the grid can be set up for an entertaining race. And my money, honestly, Will Power. I think he could go the whole race, all 260 laps in the lead. We've seen once he hits the front and ovals, he has that pace to just take off and go for it. But don't count out Marcus Ericsson, the Indy 500 winner. He led under difficult conditions as well after 2 late restarts at the Indy 500. Could be something good. And I'm thinking with the top 7 really close together in the title fight as well, it's throw your money up in the air and who's going to come out on top. 3 races to go and everything being so exciting. I can't wait for tonight, and I really hope it gets going.
You want an intense race to watch with the points championship going down the last few races. Watch the NTT INDYCAR Series race from Gateway tonight because it's going to be incredible. The top 7 are all top 7 points. I mean, this championship is close. Very, very close. Will Power, congratulations to Will Power for tying one of the all-time greats in not just IndyCar racing, but motorsports history. Mario Andretti with 67 career poles. That's saying something after the career Mario Andretti had at IndyCar, but it's gonna be awesome, incredible, and I would watch this race tonight, to see how this championship goes down, because after this, what's next on the calendar? The Grand Prix of Portland in the Rose City of Oregon. So tonight's race at Gateway is going to be one you do not want to miss.
Yeah, certainly a race you don't want to miss, especially when it's concerning IndyCar and oval racing. I think it's quite remarkable that the top 7 in points are starting positions 1 through 7. That's something you really don't see all the time. And it just goes to show you that these teams are pushing as hard as they can because this is the nitty gritty now, getting down to the very end of the season. And we make one mistake tonight at Gateway, and it could be game over championship wise. So these 7 drivers, 7 different race teams, they're going to be working extremely hard to make sure that they put themselves in position to contend to stay in championship contention for the remainder of the season. And with Team Penske and Chip Ganassi racing starting at the front, everyone else is trying to catch up. Aaron McLaren has Pato Award in 7th, but teammate Felix Rosenqvist is starting at the very back after he spun yesterday in qualifying. Rookie Devlin DeFrancesco starting 9th, the highest starting Andretti Autosport driver to many's surprise. Will any of the Andretti and McLaren drivers have a shot at victory tonight?
Nope. I think it's going to be either a Team Penske driver or someone from Chip Ganassi Racing. To me right now, Chip Ganassi Racing and Team Penske are, in order to be the best in IndyCar, you have to win against those 2 teams. I mean, you see what Will Power's done this year. With Team Penske, he's on top of the points. You've seen what his teammate Scott McLaughlin has done this year. with Team Penske 2 wins. You've seen what Chip Ganassi Racing has done this year, so it's either going to be a Team Penske driver or someone from Chip Ganassi Racing taking the win on the oval at Gateway.
I'm in complete agreement. The Penskes were so fast yesterday in qualifying. I think they're my top bet for victory as well. I think, what was it? We had Scott McLaughlin come through. He was a mile per hour quicker than what was, I think, Sato and Ericsson. And then we had Joseph Newgarden coming through, going quicker again. Ericsson ended up, Ericsson was third. So McLaughlin was fourth, and Ericsson went quicker. Then Newgarden went a mile per hour faster. Then Will Power completely knocked after everything with a brilliant strategy and just did a brilliant, 182 mile an hour, 182.9 mile an hour, I can remember from last night, and blew everyone away. So Penske's, I think I've got this one in the bag. And if only they could get it working on another oval as well, that the big boss upstairs might be happy about as well. But maybe next season.
Yeah, maybe next year for Team Penske in the Indianapolis 500. I'm sure it's very frustrating for Roger Penske that they can get it right at all the other oval tracks on the schedule, but the big granddaddy of them all, the greatest spectacle in racing, that seems like the one race which Team Penske has really struggled in recent years. But tonight, I think it's certainly going to come down to the big teams, Team Penske or Chip Ganassi Racing. But who knows what could happen? Because, as you mentioned, Josh, there could be some weather tonight. We could be racing a halfway. It could be a total washout. Who knows? So I think that could potentially open the possibility that somebody else could steal a win. And last night, IndyCar held a special high lane practice session to get the second groove working up top, similar to what they did at Texas Motor Speedway in the spring. The second lane there worked well during the race, as we saw with Joseph Newgarden make that last lap pass on the outside, exiting turn 4. Over Scott McLaughlin to win that race. However, there's a chance of rain this evening, which could totally wash the rubber built up off the track and ruin any potential progress to improve the on-track product. For IndyCar, Gateway is mostly single groove, so track position is going to be really important whenever we get going. Do you expect a second groove during the race, and could the threat of weather increase the chances of a surprise winner?
I hope that the second groove that they've worked on throughout and to try and build it up really plays a factor, because, as you said, Kobe, it worked really well at Texas. Like, it was giving us so much better racing as to what many people describe as now is a NASCAR track, Texas, as well, with that special groove in the top of the corners as well that IndyCars don't like, because it's effectively like putting them on ice. So I'm hoping that now that they've bedded in this track, it stays dry and we get a really great race with drivers choosing either high line or low line and both being around about the same coming off of turn 4. So I'm hoping it's going to be a good race. In terms of the threat of weather, that's looking very likely, as sadly we all know, and not looking forward to it as well, because that means I'll have to be up from 11 p.m. The race is scheduled to start my time, and that means I won't get to bed until about 2 a.m. anyway. And the likelihood is with the red flag, it could be about 4 a.m., which means I probably get about an hour's sleep before I have to wake up for warm-up for MotoGP. So if anybody needs me after 2 o'clock tomorrow before the NASCAR, I will be asleep. So sorry about that, everyone. I think the weather, though, could produce an interesting winner if the track is greasy, because then it's an open field. A greasy oval, that's anybody's guess who could win. And maybe I'll throw in a wild prediction there. If it is greasy and is wet, I think Jimmy Johnson will take a win. Let's just throw him in there, because he has sadly been a bit off the pace this weekend at an oval. Only made one start here before in Xfinity back in 03. So I think he could be an unlikely winner if it's greasy.
Yeah, Josh, I agree with everything you said. I think, with this second groove, I think it'll produce much better racing tonight, and hopefully the weather gods will be nice, and then we can have a clear race and not have to go through any weather delays like we've seen in other motorsport series this year. So with Josh, we know you have to get going to prepare for the IndyCar race, but it's time for pick a winner. So Josh, who are your picks for MotoGP in Austria, IndyCar Gateway, and NASCAR at the historic Watkins Glen International Road Course?
MotoGP, I'm going to go for Johann Zarco. I think he's impressed me most today of all in the mixed conditions. In IndyCar, I think I'll go for Will Power taking the win if it stays dry. If it goes wet, greasy, as I said, Jimmy Johnson, I think as an outside shot. For NASCAR, let's go Kevin Harvick. Let's go Harvick. Let's see what he can do. Actually, no, scrap that. All right, no, we'll say Kevin Harvick officially. But who I think is going to win the NASCAR? I think it's going to be Kimi Raikkonen. I think I'll do it. Well, I thought like this, and then I'll just give a very little opinion to what everybody wants to do. That's more Alain Prost, to be fair. I think Kimi Raikkonen is going to win. There you go. That's your big shock headline.
Oh boy. Okay. All right, Josh said, and be sure to subscribe to Josh's YouTube channel for all the coverage of MotoGP from Austria and the NTT INDYCAR race in Gateway.
Yeah, we're going to have to fill tonight.
So, Kobe, I'll throw it over to you. And we have an update from the World Rally Championship in Belgium.
Yeah, and as always, Josh, thank you for being here. And oh boy, that would be really crazy if Kimi Raikkonen ends up winning. So far in the first few minutes of NASCAR Cup Series practice, Raikkonen has been 12th fastest, so he's already on the pace and already up there with some drivers like Kevin Harvick and Kyle Larson. So very impressive start off to the weekend for the Iceman. And next, moving on the World Rally Championship, as of stage 13, Thierry Neuville leads the rally in Belgium. But right before we went on the air, Neuville on stage 15 went into a ditch. Joe, can you explain what happened here?
Yes, Thierry Neuville had the overall lead, and there's only 16 stages today, so it looked like he was going to be on track to get another win in the Ypres Rally here at Belgium. But then, as he was exiting the corner, slippery with some gravel on the tarmac, started sliding, got onto the grass, and then as soon as the car went into the ditch, passenger side onto the ditch, and then went up like this. So the back tires could not back out. The front tires were too far in the ditch. He thankfully had some spectators go there, help get the vehicle out, but then the damage was showing, pulled off to access road. He was done for the day. So his shot of winning again has gone up in smoke. Big blow for everyone in his team trying to get that championship. His race is over, and now Autonic inherits the lead with only a few stages left tomorrow.
Yeah, only a few stages left tomorrow. And you mentioned Autonic's lead and Elfyn Evans now the top two, and Lapie moves to third. Collie Roving Paramedic caused a mistake yesterday, rolling his car over and done for the day. Very, very unfortunate for the championship leader, but he's still running less than 34th place, but out of points contention. Stage 16 will wrap up today's action with stages 17 through 20. Tomorrow, we'll recap the WRC race in Belgium tomorrow on Grid Live Wrap Up, following the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen, which is highly anticipated this year.
Highly anticipated. The NASCAR Cup Series, second to last road course of the year at Watkins Glen. Only the Roval is ahead, but this one is really gaining a lot of international attention. As we all know, Kimi Raikkonen is in the field. 7 countries represent in this race. We also have Daniel Kvyat in the race. Of course, he used to race against Kimi Raikkonen in Formula One. No Formula One this weekend. No other races that day because IndyCar Saturday night, MotoGP much earlier in the day. So a lot of eyes around the world on this race, especially because of Kimi Raikkonen in this race. However, the last couple road course races for the Cup Series, been a little bit on the crazier side. We've seen Sonoma being the one outlier, as that was pretty much almost green flag all the way where Dan Suarez took the win. And Watkins Glen, we have seen some big crashes, hard crashes at this track because there's a lot of high-speed corners all around this racetrack. Adam, starting with you, do you believe we will have a race that will leave a positive impression on many first-time viewers because they're tuning in for Kimi or other drivers watching this race?
Oh yeah, Joe. And you said there's no F1 this weekend. Well, if you're an F1 fan, you'll tune in to see how Kimi Raikkonen does and Jenny Kvyat. If you're a sports car fan, you'll probably tune in to see how drivers Mike Rockenfeller, Joey Hand, and Kyle Chile have done. They have done. This is the most nations represented in a NASCAR race in its history, and you can think about how long NASCAR has been around. If you're an overall motorsports fan, you will be tuning in tomorrow to see how Kimi Raikkonen does against some of NASCAR's best. I mean, it's a international star-studded lineup at the Glen this weekend, and it's second last race before the playoffs. So a lot of eyes will be watching to see how the regular NASCAR stars do. But of course, all eyes are going to be on the Iceman, Kimi Raikkonen, to see how he does in his NASCAR Cup Series debut.
Yeah, and typically, Adam, whenever we come to Watkins Glen or any racetrack, we always be talking about all the attention on Chase Elliott, NASCAR's most popular driver. But this weekend, Chase Elliott might actually be an afterthought because everybody's going to be paying attention to Kimi Raikkonen with all the media fanfare. Nobody's going to really be paying attention to the other drivers like they normally do. And got a comment there from Alex Fleener. I actually saw the incident you're talking about there, Alex. That was a really bad practice lap for Toyota with Ty Gibbs losing it out of the bus stop and getting into the tire barrier, and then Christopher Bell blowing up on the same lap in two separate incidents. So weekend's not getting off to a good start for the 2311 Racing and Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota right there. But I think in terms of looking at Kimi Raikkonen, I think this is going to be huge internationally for NASCAR. I don't know if this event will leave a positive impression on fans watching from abroad because sometimes these NASCAR races get really crazy and a lot of controversy, and you look at the stages and overtime and all of that, and for a lot of the purists F1 fans out there, that might be a major turnoff for them. And we've seen the stages on the road courses that they're really taking the strategy element out of the race, which is really hurt some of the racing we've seen in the past on road courses. So who knows if it will leave a positive impression, but overall I think it's really good that Kimi Raikkonen is doing this race. Is great for motorsports. There's going to be a lot of attention on this particular NASCAR race, a lot more attention than usual. And looking at what Kimi's been able to do in just a few minutes of practice with qualifying coming up shortly, Kimi's right on the pace with drivers like Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, some of the biggest stars in NASCAR. And for a driver coming from a completely different discipline, racing in Formula One, and to be right on the pace with some of NASCAR's biggest stars, just a few minutes of practice, I think that's really a big deal, and kudos to Kimi for doing all the work and preparing for this major one-off race. And Kimi this morning seems optimistic about what he can do in this race, and he doesn't have any other plans to race in NASCAR after this. Just going out there having fun, not a lot of pressure, and just showing what he can do against the biggest stars in stock car racing.
Go out there, have a lot of fun, see what he could do with the rest of the competition. However, an interesting aspect is a scenario where you could have a driver like Kimi or even AJ Allmendinger. He has won here when he was full-time. Drivers that are not in contention for the championship leading the race towards the end, and then you might have a driver like Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr. in a second place position. They're winless. There's only Daytona after this. Final lap, push comes to shove, you need a win to get into the playoffs, and you move a driver like Kimi Raikkonen out of the way. Kobe, do you believe it will be fair game to move a driver that's only there one time or a couple times and not a championship contender, push them out of the way, and get that win to get in the playoffs? I can't imagine the chaos if Kimi Raikkonen is pushed out of the way on the last lap.
Yeah, I know a lot of people probably be upset if that were to happen. And thinking about the Xfinity race at Mid-Ohio quite a handful years ago, Alex Taglioni was leading on the final lap, and Regan Smith was second. A lot of people obviously know Alex Taglioni from his open wheel racing days. Taglioni was going to win at Mid-Ohio, and before they come into the final turn, Regan Smith didn't even brake. He absolutely shoved he didn't wreck Taglioni, but he shoved him out of the way, and Regan Smith ended up winning the race, and that upset a lot of people. So I can imagine the reaction would be the same, especially considering Kimi's popularity and all that he's accomplished in his racing career in Formula One. But Joe, I'm actually thinking about it the other way around. Would it be fair for a driver who's only out there for a one-off or running part-time to go? would it be fair for them to move a driver who's running full time out of the way for the win? Like imagine if you're a Martin Truex Jr. or a Ryan Blaney who's trying to solidify your spot in the playoffs, and then you have someone like AJ Allmendinger who's more than likely going to be running up front at Watkins Glen, running second, and you're leading on the last lap, and then Allmendinger gives you the bumper and takes you out, and there goes your playoff chance. Well, there goes your chance of locking yourself into the playoffs like that. So I'm actually wondering about the question you asked, Joe, the other way around. Like, how will a driver who's not in contention for this Cup Series championship, if they're up front at the end battling for the win, how are they going to race the drivers who are trying to make it into the playoffs, or the playoff drivers themselves?
Yeah, and we actually have a comment here from one of our viewers. He said, from Alex Fleener, he says, I've seen a lot of people in F1 group saying they might tune in for a while. Even some to have said they might check out the NASCAR Xfinity Series race today at Watkins Glen. Yeah, like I said, if you're an F1 fan, you'll tune in to see how Kimi Raikkonen does it. Because of all the success that Kimi Raikkonen had, in F1. But Kobe, I'll agree with you. If you're Kimi Raikkonen and, in your second and say Martin Truex Jr. or even Chase Elliott is leading in a white flag, if you're Kimi and you want to go out there and win, I think you will, give the bumper to somebody, and move them out of the way. I mean, it's going to be an intense race tomorrow at Watkins Glen. I mean, tune in to see how Kimi does, and what'll happen. I mean, it's the next last race before we start the playoffs. It's going to be an intense race in upstate New York.
Now we've been talking a lot about Kimi Raikkonen, a little bit about the drivers needing a win. Some of the early favorites are full-time racers: Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott. Truex, he has won on road course, and of course Daniel Suarez, his first win at Sonoma this year. Then you have drivers like Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell. They're seeking a win to get in the playoffs. They've had some strong runs, but they can't get in by the points. Then you have Kevin Harvick. He proved us all wrong last weekend, making 2 in a row. He's going to try to get 3 in a row, and I think if he pulled that off, I think a lot of people will see that as a surprise, considering how this field looks very competitive on this road course. And then, of course, one driver not going anywhere next year, Aric Almirola. He resigned. He's just back in the 10 next year. He will love to get a win here to prove, hey, this is why they re-signed me. I could get a win. It's going to be a big surprise win if he did it. And then Kyle Busch, almost nobody knows what's his plans for next year. He'll love to get a win to try to just increase his value in, hey, I could still win races. This is why you want me in 2023. Adam, which drivers do you believe comes in with the best mindset in taking the win here at Watkins Glen?
Well, Aric Almirola has a huge monkey on his back this weekend because his sponsor this weekend is Go Bowling, and it's the Go Bowling at the Glen. So he wants to do good for his sponsor. But I'm gonna say Michael McDowell. He is really good on road courses. Next Saturday night is Daytona, and we all know how crazy that can be. And we know you can win from anywhere at Daytona. But I think Michael McDowell, I think he wants to go out there and get in the playoffs and get a win, So I'm going to say Michael McDowell.
Yeah, and I actually have a few things that I want to talk about here. It's kind of related to the question, kind of not. But getting back to the previous segment about Trackhouse, Justin Marks, the co-owner of Trackhouse Racing, this morning said that for next year he's looking at 6 to 8 races of Project 91, so we could potentially see 6 drivers from other disciplines of racing, international drivers, and 6 to 8 Cup Series events. And going back to what you said about Eric Almirola, we need to be careful when talking about the media report that come out from yesterday at Motorsport.com. I know Jim Mutter said that he has some sources telling him that Eric Almirola will be returning to the 10 car. But just because you hear that from a media outlet doesn't mean that's going to happen. Unless you heard it from Stewart Haas Racing themselves, they put out a press release. Then you should always take that with a major grain of salt. Eric Almirola even come out to the media this morning saying he has not re-signed with Stewart Haas Racing yet. So that's still up in the air, and he hasn't even made a decision yet of what he's going to do. So it's not confirmed that Eric Almirola is going to be going back to the 10 car, but it's certainly possible. It's just not 100% right now. So wanted to clear all of that up for our viewers. And Kyle Busch also made headlines this morning talking to the media about an update on his 2023 situation. Kyle basically said that there's nothing's changed since the last race weekend, but he did say, I quote, "There is a big change coming." And he said there's been many sleepless nights. And he also added, according to my colleague from the Podium Finish, Nathan Solomon, he said Busch said that it won't be the same as it's been for the last 15 years. So potentially Kyle Busch is hinting to us that he could potentially be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing at the end of the year. But who knows? I think it's very interesting that he's admitted now that there's a big change coming, regardless of how this situation turns out, and that it won't be the same that it has been for the last 15 years for the driver at number 18. Toyota Camry. So there's a lot of things going on silly season wise this week in NASCAR. And getting back to the question you asked Joe about which driver do we believe is going to have the best mindset in here, I think it has to be Chris Buescher. He's riding that high off of last race weekend. Dale Jr. had a lot of fun, calling him Christopher Buescher, and really nice to see Chris embracing that. Even changes his name over the driver's door and on social media and all of that to Christopher Buescher. Really seeing his personality shine. I think Buescher is gonna have a lot of momentum and have the best mindset coming into the race at Watkins Glen.
Chris Buescher has to be very confident about this upcoming race at Watkins Glen, especially how he's been at the road courses contending for wins. He could really, I think, bring a lot of positive momentum to the Roush Fenway Keselowski RFK race team. Comment in the chat room, where can I watch the race, guys? Well, USA Network will be covering this race, so definitely encourage everyone to be sure to tune in to this race tomorrow as the Cup Series goes to Watkins Glen. It's going to be very exciting, of course. About 90 minutes following the Watkins Glen race, we're going to have Grid Live wrap up.
Yeah. Next we're going to talk about some supercars action. The Repco Supercars Championship is at Sandown this weekend. 3 races. The first event of the weekend was dominated by one driver, and it wasn't Shane Van Gisbergen, to everyone's surprise. Instead, it was Dick Johnson Racing's Will Davison, a pole sitter, taking the number 17 Shelby Power Ford Mustang to a flag-to-flag victory. Davison's second win of the year comes after a contract extension and rumors around the supercars paddock that he might get replaced. Now a dominant performance, and SVG didn't have anything for Davison. Was this the drive Will Davison needed to prove his doubters wrong? And do you see him possibly sweeping the weekend instead of SVG?
Well, Kobe, to let our viewers know, Will Davison had an incredible lap to get the pole, and it was kind of controversial because people thought he was going to get a penalty after exiting pit road too early to start his qualifying lap. But once Davison got the pole and the green light came on, Will Davison took off, and SVG could not catch him. This is huge for Will Davison because it proved that even though Triple Eight Race Engineering has been really dominant at Sandown, anyone can win there. So could I see SVG winning races 2 and 3 after what we saw in race 1? Yeah, it's hard to beat that number 97 Red Bull Impulse Racing Holden Commodore. That is Shane Van Gisbergen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam. It's going to be extremely difficult for Will Davison to sweep this weekend. Obviously, that was a great race for him in race one. Leading flag to flag, dominating the show in SVG. He didn't have anything for Davison. Davison was just in another league of his own. So Davison really had his own SVG like performance, and that's really good for him because a lot of people been wondering like if he can potentially get a little bit closer to his teammate Anton De Pasquale, try to match him because a lot of times Anton is the number one driver there and he's always leading the charge while Will Davison is bringing up the rear, not on the same level. So I think this was a big confidence booster for Davison and show everybody be like I absolutely deserve this seat. I'm more than capable of driving a top tier ride in the Repco Supercars Championship. And we'll see if Will Davison will be able to keep this momentum up for the remainder of the race weekend with two more supercars races to go. And before we get to everyone's favorite game, want to give an update on Kimi Raikkonen. NASCAR Cup Series qualifying Watkins Glen is about to start, but after practice, Kimi Raikkonen was 20th fastest, so very impressive. Kyle Busch was 19th fastest, so right behind him, and Raikkonen was faster than drivers like Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., Eric Almirola, Kevin Harvick, so some of the big names in NASCAR. Very impressive run for the Iceman, and we'll see in just a short while what he'll be able to do in qualifying. But P20, if I'm Raikkonen, I'm very happy with that.
Oh yeah, Kobe, I agree with you. Now it's time for everybody's favorite game here at Grid Network. Pick a winner, and we take a look at our updated leaderboard standings right here, and use the hashtag Pick a Winner on social media. And if you're outside the top 10, you get your first pick right. You get 4 extra bonus points. So if you've never played Pick a Winner, come join us to see how you do against everyone here at Grid Network and our viewers. With that all being said, it's time that we make our picks. First up, MotoGP is at the Red Bull Ring this weekend. After all, Joe, Julia, and Josh did an incredible job breaking everything down that has happened there. So, Joe, I'll start with you. Who wins the MotoGP race at the Red Bull Ring in Austria?
I'm going with Pecco Bagnaia getting the win. He's on the front row. He is really determined. I think he's doing his best riding right now. He's going to take the win. Pecco Bagnaia.
I gotta agree with that. Pekka's been right on a hot streak this season, running extremely well, and I think that's going to continue. And he's going to win the MotoGP Austrian Grand Prix this weekend.
Even though I'm trying to catch you two, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna make it a clean sweep. I'm gonna say Pecco Bagnaia gets the win in Austria. Next, we head to Worldwide Technology Raceway, formerly known as Gateway International Raceway, where the NTT INDYCAR Series is running. Last oval of the season. It's going to be a real intense race with the top 7 in points starting 1st through 7th. So, Joe, who takes the win on the last oval race of the 2022 NTT INDYCAR season?
This one, I want to say Will Power. He's on the pole. He has been very consistent all year long. But I got to go with his teammate, Joseph Newgarden. He is good in the ovals. He could have easily swept Iowa had it not been for a mechanical error in that second race that caused him to crash. I'm going with Joseph Newgarden.
I promise I'm not copying you, Joe, but I also had Joseph Newgarden as well. Seems like those Team Penske cars are really dialed in. This weekend, you mentioned the second race in Iowa. He absolutely dominated that race until something broke on the car, end up crashing out. I think he's going to get the short oval win that got away, and he's going to get it done tonight under the lights at Gateway.
I'm not making it unanimous. I'm going with Josh. I'm saying Will Power, who starts on the pole. I think he makes it a victory after starting from pole position. And next, the NASCAR Cup Series is in upstate New York this weekend for the Go Bowling at the Glen. lot of international flavor here, headlined by the Iceman, Kimi Raikkonen. So, Joe, who throws a strike and takes the checkered flag tomorrow afternoon in the Go Bowling at the Glen?
It's going to be a driver that has won here in a stock car. I'm going with Chase Elliott and the number 9. This is a good track for him to rebound, get another win, and just earn himself more points before the playoffs. Chase Elliott is my pick.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Chase Elliott when you're coming to a road course at Watkins Glen. He's been really good here, but I'm going to go with a driver who's run well on the road courses this year, and he's been so close to breaking through and going to victory lane a few times this year. I think the driver to number 17, Mr. Christopher himself, Chris Buescher, is going to get the job done. He's going to get that win, and there's certainly going to be a party for him, to try to get that 16th and final playoff spot before we get to Daytona next weekend.
Well, I'm going to have to go with the driver that needs a win to get into the playoffs. He missed out. He missed out last weekend in Richmond. Yeah. Somehow I think Martin Truex Jr. finds a way to get it done at the Go Bowling at the Glen on Sunday. And next, but definitely not least, we head down under to Australia, where the Repco Supercar Series is at the legendary Sandown International Raceway. Will Davison took race 1. So, Joe, who wins races 2 and 3 at this legendary track in Australia?
This is so hard just because it's so easy to go with SVG to sweep it all. Well, the remaining 2, because you just don't know how the others are going to turn out. So I'm going to go on a gamble. I'm going to say Cam Waters is going to win the next race, and Shane Van Gisbergen is only going to take the 3rd and final race. That is my prediction.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go with SVG to win race 2 and race 3, the sweep Sunday down at Sandown. SVG is, he's just been performing so strong this year. Although he'll have a race occasionally where he doesn't win, that team is just so strong. I really don't feel confident right now picking anybody but Shane Van Gisbergen.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Kobe. SVG is on a hot streak right now. He didn't win race 1 at Sandown, but he's been, really successful here at Sandown. We all remember what happened last year, and he's on the verge of equaling Scott McLaughlin's win record for a season. So SVG wins races 2 and 3 at Sandown, and we'll wrap up the coverage of Sandown tomorrow night on a wrap-up. So, Joe, time to wrap up this edition of the Pre-Race Show.
And we do have a comment in the chat room from Kai Hitchcock, watching because of Kimi. Hopefully, series will be good. It's going to be very interesting. We thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and like, because as Adam said, we'll be on the air tomorrow to recap Kimi Raikkonen's race, potentially if he wins, how he did, and then, of course, the NASCAR playoffs, as well as MotoGP and the IndyCar Series. Busy weekend of racing for us at the Grid Network, but I encourage everyone to be sure to tune in. Also, if you like what you see, subscribe to our Patreon, Con the Show, Mark and Robin. They help us stay on the air by helping us cover the bills each and every month. If you don't want to do a monthly contribution, Buy Me a Coffee allows a one-time contribution. Buy a drink for your favorite on-air personality. That's what Edward, Amber, and Zach have done. We appreciate all their support and everyone that's tuning in. Be sure, if you're brand new to us, besides YouTube, we stream on Twitch, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and we're on Instagram as well, too, with posts, TikTok, where we post every week our Pick a Winner updates. And, of course, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Grid Rankin, and also Grid_History, our big video vault with all the videos from the past races. And highly encourage everyone to check out public.com. If you're invested investing in the stock market, use the referral code GridNet. You get some free stock to invest. $5 of public.com money You put it in a stock and you can start investing in the stock market. That is public.com with the referral code GRIDNET. Very exciting. And then another comment, watching from South Africa, I will subscribe. Kai, thank you so much. We definitely looking forward to seeing you in the chat room more frequently in all future shows. Tomorrow, approximately 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race, we're back on the air. Then Monday, Grid Encore with Ben Schneider, Brandon, and Joshua as they recap some of the feeder series. So in the future, that'll include Formula 2, Formula 3, Indy Lights. We know they're going to be coming up shortly at Portland, plus this weekend at Gateway. Then Kobe and Adam, Grid Tonight, the recap, all the top news stories. And then Women in Motorsports, this weekend show was postponed since Daniel is on assignment. And then we do it all over again next Saturday right here on the Grid Network on the air. We thank everyone for tuning in to today's show. Especially, we want to give a big thank you to Joshua and Julia, who were on the air earlier with us to preview the MotoGP and IndyCar race. And for Kobe and from the Podium Finish and Adam, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDNET for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.